It's April 2024. A woman sits motionless in a Vietnamese courtroom, perfectly still. A judge speaks the words no billionaire expects to hear: death.
It's 10 a.m. here on the East Coast. It's 9 p.m. in Vietnam, where we are tracking a developing story. A real estate tycoon was sentenced to death for her role in one of the biggest corruption cases in the country's history.
Truong My Lan, property tycoon, real estate empress, now convicted of the largest bank fraud in Asian history. She stole $44 billion, nearly 11% of Vietnam's entire GDP. One woman, one family, 1 decade of fraud. But now, she might walk free. She built it, she broke it, and now she wants to buy her freedom with the very billions she stole from the system. To understand how a Vietnamese woman engineered a multi-billion-dollar fraud, we need to go back to where it all began. Long before the real estate, the bank takeover, the missing billions, the story begins in Saigon, in the post-war era of communist Vietnam. From the 1960s, a young My Lan, alongside her mother, was selling cosmetics in the stalls of Ben Thanh Market. For decades, through war and hardship, the family preserved. Vietnam was broken. Conflict had left the country isolated and impoverished, but change was coming. In 1986, Vietnam launched economic reforms legalizing private enterprise. Lan, now in her 30s, took her chance. By the early 90s, she'd gone from selling cosmetics to buying land. She founded the Van Tin Phat Group, acquiring hotels, shopping centers, and office towers. As Vietnam's economy boomed, so did Lan's fortune. In '92, she married Eric Chu Ki, a Hong Kong property tycoon. Together, they built a cross-border business dynasty. In less than 2 decades, she'd become one of Vietnam's most powerful businesswomen. But real estate just wasn't enough. In 2011, she was the driving force behind the merger of 3 banks, forming Saigon Commercial Bank. On paper, she owned less than 5%. But behind the scenes, she was building something unprecedented. Her decade of fraud would soon begin. These stories aren't easy to tell, and they rarely get pushed by the algorithm. If you want more content like this that cuts deeper, please hit the subscribe button. I'm building to 1,000 subscribers, and your help genuinely matters. Enjoy. It's 2012, and Truong My Lan has overseen the merger of 3 struggling banks. On paper, she's a minority shareholder. In reality, she's about to pull off the largest bank heist in Asian history. Vietnamese law bans anyone from owning more than 5% of a bank. For her plan to work, she needs 90. Through her network of trusted associates, she gained control of SCB Bank. With the bank secured, she built her feeder system, a framework of over 1,000 companies, some real, some fake. The process was simple. As the newly formed companies applied for loans, her people approved them. Over a 10-year period, 90% of the loans issued by the SCB were to Lan's companies. According to court documents, government officials were bribed and auditors were paid a monthly stipend. For a decade, the system worked flawlessly, but Vietnam was changing. To foreign investors and global media, Vietnam's reputation had been marred by years of unchecked corporate corruption. And so in 2016, Communist Party Secretary Nguyen Phu Trong launched an anti-corruption campaign called the Blazing Furnace.
Our country without rules and discipline is chaotic, it's unstable, and we will never develop.
Under the Blazing Furnace, 2 presidents fell, 3 deputy prime ministers resigned, and hundreds of party officials were swept from power. No one was untouchable. The furnace burned through the highest levels of Vietnamese power. The Blazing Furnace was coming. It's October 2022. The first warning signs appear. 3 SCB Bank employees go missing in 1 week. On the 8th of October, Truong My Lan is arrested. SCB customers rushed to withdraw their money. Billions withdrawn in a matter of days. Credit was frozen. Real estate stalled. Bond markets collapsed entirely. Imagine you're an SCB customer and you need a loan for your home, your business, your children's education. But what you don't know is that 93% of the bank's lending power has already been reserved to shell companies controlled by the same woman who concealed her ownership of the bank. This wasn't just mismanagement, this was the quiet theft of your future. The investigation consumed 17 months and evidence filled over 105 boxes. And now the largest fraud trial in the country's history would soon begin. "17 months after her arrest, Truong My Lan faced her reckoning. The woman who claimed she didn't understand banking sat before mountains of evidence, proving otherwise. One by one, her empire confessed. Her husband Eric, 9 years for helping orchestrate the scheme. Her niece, who had managed the shell companies, 17. 17 government officials who had taken bribes, all found guilty. But Lan maintained her innocence. The woman who controlled $44 billion claimed ignorance of basic banking. On April the 11th, 2024, death was the verdict. But Vietnamese law offered her one final gamble. Pay back a percentage of what she stole, and death becomes life in prison. Imagine you've just been sentenced to death, and the judge offers you a deal. Pay $9 billion, and you can live. For most people, it's an impossible choice. For Truong My Lan, it was a business calculation. She still owns her empire. Hotels, shopping centers, office towers. Her legal team are working to appraise everything. But selling $9 billion of assets under duress creates a problem. When buyers know you're facing death, they smell a bargain. Meanwhile, Vietnam counts the cost. The woman who embodied the country's economic miracle had nearly destroyed it. Today, Truong My Lan remains on death row. Her appeals continue. Her empire hangs in the balance. From market trader to financial mastermind to death row inmate, Truong My Lan now faces the ultimate transaction.